Work, right?
Good
Oh, yeah.
morning, everyone.
Hi.
Hello, hello. Okay, I'm going to share us out here. Hopefully, we can get this going quick. This takes just a second to show up on my end. There we
And tag
are.
me.
You're tagged.
You are awesome. Isn't she
You're
awesome?
tagged. You're it.
Thank you. I'm it. We are it.
One more. Got it. All right.
Do you have your coffee? Are you ready for a good conversation?
Yes, everybody grab your coffee. It is non-negotiable. Okay, welcome to Braveheart Conversations. I am Jillian Aurora, and this is my co-host, Marie Wallace.
Hi, guys.
Hello, hello, good morning. And today I'm excited to talk about standards, non-negotiable standards. And many of us have standards that are suffering. And this is a really, really important piece of relationships. And, as we've talked about the last few weeks, the month of July has been about flourishing relationships, right? It is the time of year where everything around us is flourishing and green and happy and growing. And so that's what we wanted to talk about in our relationships, because we sometimes talk about the relationships that are dead and dying and needing an upgrade or needing some revision. And so now, we really wanted to talk about the things that make a relationship flourish and nurture them.
Yeah.
And, we all need a little fertilizer sometimes. And so
And some
that's,
clipping back.
yes, well, we definitely talk about the pruning. I have like a whole course about pruning. But yeah, today we want to talk about standards because that's a really, really vital part of any relationship. Very vital even prior to having a relationship. Knowing yourself. Standards require knowing a lot about yourself in order to know what your standards are, because everyone's standards are different. So let's do a little definition work at first. So what is a standard? I like to define standards as what the requirement is to access you. And when I say you, I define that by your time, your attention, your labor, your resources, and your body. Those are like the different aspects of you that people get to ask permission to have access to you. So we've talked about entitlement to self before. That's a little bit of a precursor to standards. You are entitled to you. You are entitled to your time, your attention, your labor, your resources, your body, more than anybody else is. So that's a little bit of like a really, really quick foundation before we get to standards. Is we have to acknowledge that you have the right to you, you're entitled to you, and you have rights. Your rights are to those pieces of you. So your standards then are the requirements that you hold to access those parts of you. For example, someone who wants to access my time, a standard to access my time would be one, that they ask permission to access my time, that they don't act entitled to my time. Two might be they are respectful of my time. They don't try to take advantage of my time. So like extending time past what we agreed on, those sorts of things. So those are a couple little examples of having a standard to access your time. Marie, do you want to give some just ideas around what you would define as a standard and maybe an example of a standard you hold?
Well, that's a very good question. I have a lot of really good ones. Um, I think for me, I have a lot of standards around how to talk with me, have conversations with me. And so it's very respectful. Like we talk about generous assumptions of both of us. We talk about yeah, always seeing the best in the other person is the generous assumption. And then no name calling, no hitting below the belt or bringing up the past. Those are usually, I love to have conversations with people, and I actually even have conversations where we both have very opposing views.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes it lovely is going, oh, I haven't thought of it that way before. And it just allows for me to grow and expand as a person and them too. But that's just a little bit around like conversations, because I love having courageous conversations. Have a lot of them with Joe, and it's just nice to have those general, rules around how to treat me in a conversation. So that's just one of them.
Yep, yep. Um, yeah, so standards, another easy way of thinking of standards that is helpful for me is values plus rights equals standards. So there's again a little bit of foundational work that gets to be laid here before you can get to standards, and that is knowing your values.
Which means knowing yourself.
Yeah, and your values. So, a lot of these terms really get mixed together a lot of the time. So I want to take a moment to clarify what I'm saying, each of these phrases that I'm using. So, values, what I'm referring to is not the shoulds. We often associate values with what we think we should want. We've all been taught to some degree what we should value, what should be important to us, whether that's political values or religious values or
Relationship values.
there's all cultural values. There's a lot of values that we've been told we should have, we're supposed to have, and I'd really like to just undo all that programming. Everything is up for question. You get to decide what you value, what is important to you. So this is really, really deep and important self-discovery work that must be done before you can really have clear standards. Because again, your standards are going to be your values plus your rights. So when we're talking about values, they're the things that you desire most, the things that you want most, and your rights are the things that are, we talk about inalienable rights, right? The basic human rights, the things that we are entitled to. We're entitled to ourselves, right? And there's also things that we are entitled to, like safety, right? I have a right to safety in my relationships. Now, I often will use the example that if I'm talking to a woman who's, say, in a domestic violence situation, I can see her right to safety all day long. But until she sees her right to safety, until she believes that she has a right to safety, it won't make any difference. It won't make any difference that she has a right to safety, that I see her right to safety, that anybody sees her right to safety. Until she sees that she has a right to safety, it won't matter. And any of our rights are the same. When we believe we have the right to something, it changes the entire game. So I see a lot of women out there who don't value themselves enough to see their own basic rights. Like, I have the right to be in a relationship with no verbal abuse.
Yeah.
I have the right to be in a relationship without any financial coercion. I mean, there's a lot of really basic things that I can be on the outside looking in saying, well, yeah, absolutely, she has the right to those things. And unless she sees it, it won't matter. So, Marie, do you have anything to add to the rights?
Well, I was thinking about some of the old paradigms of what a good girl does as far as rights go. We have the right to choose our path, right? Like, that's a very basic right, how we want things to do. Because I think about a good girl, because a good girl, when I was growing up, does this. You get married. You may usually not encouraged to go to school. I fortunately had a dad that was very much about education, but really don't go. School wasn't part of it, and you don't have kids before. I mean, just all the things like, and you had to go down this certain path, and so I just think the rights of being able to choose your path, what you desire, what you value, things that are important to you. The other one is even kids' rights, like children are to be seen, not heard, being able to speak up in a relationship. Because when I first got married, I wasn't allowed to speak because my husband was my authority over me, and it wasn't a mutual conversation. Um, does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, just not able to really explore what I valued because someone else was supposed to tell me what was important to me. I didn't. I remember even going, I don't even know how I feel about that because I've never had a conversation where my opinion mattered or even explored that in myself to go, what do I feel? How do I feel about this? So, yeah, it's a very
Yeah,
basic
that's
right that I didn't even know I didn't, a basic right that I didn't even know that I wanted.
well, this is such a really great point. I'm so glad that you brought that up because this touches on one of the conflicts, I guess, that come up, or the confusion that comes up for a lot of women is um, you cannot enforce boundaries or standards if you are still dependent. And when we're coming out of hierarchy programming, which we talk about quite a lot, but you're referring to all of this history that
Yeah.
we've come from where we've had no authority, no personal authority, right? And I'm not talking about, being authority over other people. I'm talking about just being able to make decisions for ourselves. That legally hasn't been a right
Right.
for millennia. For a very, very long time, we haven't had basic rights to make our own decisions. And so it makes a ton of sense that we're still coming from a lot of that programming, and we're still very uncomfortable with making decisions for ourselves and holding to boundaries and
Yeah.
standards. But I also
It
think
makes us wishy-washy too when we don't know.
totally, yeah, because we're very uncomfortable with having authority. But I also think something that you touched on that's such a key point is that when you are dependent on someone else, so if you are a wife who is totally reliant on her husband to be the authority and to provide her needs. There's stay-at-home moms or women who are completely reliant on their husband for their basic physical needs. I hear a lot of women say, well, I tried to set this boundary. But then what it ultimately comes back to is that boundary isn't enforceable because they have no power. They've given it all away. When someone else is paying all your bills and someone else is so intricately involved and powerful in your everyday life experience, you really don't have any teeth. You don't have any grounds to say this is a standard to
Yeah.
access me. Is that making
Oh
sense?
yeah, that's totally true.
And so, I hear a lot of women who throw their hands up and they're like, what do I do? Because, if I stand up to him, I can't because
I could lose everything. Yeah.
and so a lot of us have faced that in some form or another, some varying degrees. Sometimes it's,
Well, sometimes it's weaponized. I'm going to take your children,
it's
right?
very weaponized. So, I think it can be a radically different conversation if we're talking, like in my situation when I decided to get a divorce, and I did have some of this power dynamic where there was a very lopsided financial power
Yeah.
on one end than the other. I had a college degree, I had a career, I still had things that were very empowering. I cannot even imagine being in that scenario, having a house full of children, no work experience, no education. That's a very difficult hole to dig yourself out of. Not impossible. I have watched many women actually empower themselves and free themselves from those situations. But we do have to remember that in those situations, it's a whole different dynamic to set boundaries because you don't have the same personal power or autonomy. You
Yeah.
don't have the same level of independence that you're coming to the table with. So it's very imperative that we start honoring ourselves to grow our independence and our ability to take care of our own basic needs so that we can set standards to access us. Because if we don't have any of that independence, we're little more than a child. We are simply a dependent in an adult body. And so, and I'm not at all demonizing that. That is the culture that we've come from. That is the programming that we've come from. So it is no surprise that that is how we have developed, and it's no fault of anyone's that we grew up with that programming. It is our responsibility now to unravel that programming and start taking back our power.
I was just thinking, had I not had a job, I because I came from a very toxic home and a lot of alcoholism and that. And if I had not had a job then, I don't know that I would have felt empowered enough to leave and feel, because I could see things differently. And I'm not saying you need to have a job, but I'm just saying finding those ways for me to be more independent allowed me to see a bigger picture of what I could have and what I could attain once I got out of that situation. Whereas, without that, I think I would have been trapped because I had no power.
Yeah.
And same way with being in a difficult marriage. When I was in the difficult marriage, I could get myself out of it because I could see things differently.
Yeah.
And I also had good role models too. So I could see a different picture once I got myself out of that situation. So
Yeah, yeah, I think that is particularly very challenging for women, especially this is a gender specific problem because we're generally not seeing, it's a much, much smaller percentage of men
yeah.
who are disempowered by not being at least, to some degree financially independent. And you may be asking yourself, what does this have to do with a healthy relationship? What does this have to do with standards? Actually, this is very, very, very fundamental in having a relationship that is healthy, because a healthy relationship is two people who have full personal power. So if I'm in a relationship with Marie and I'm totally dependent on Marie and she's providing everything for me, she's providing my home and my food, and there's actually no choice then for
Yeah,
me
it causes
to,
codependency.
yeah, I have no choice to leave. And so I believe that true love always is from choice. It's always from want and not from need. So if I'm totally dependent on Marie and I cannot leave her, then it's not really a genuine love. I could be thinking in the back of my head, man, I really hate being here. Right?
Yeah.
And how many relationships are like this?
Yeah.
I hate being here, but I can't say anything.
I
And
can't
I
leave
better just make the
because,
most
yeah.
of it because, yeah. And so having a healthy relationship really needs to be based on two people fully capable of caring for themselves and wanting the other person. Now, again, I'll go back to what we've shared in other episodes, and that is you get to choose if you want to have hierarchy programming, if you want to have that hierarchy structure in a relationship. You're allowed to do whatever the hell you want with your life and your relationships. But we're talking from a perspective if you want a collaborative relationship, if you want a partnership. And a partnership is two equal human beings where no one is dominant, no one is submissive. They're two equal people working together.
Mutually reciprocating.
Yeah. So, in a hierarchy model, then you do have the dependence. You have one person that is the provider and the other person who is the receiver, and that those roles are very clearly defined. That is not the type of relationship that we are talking about or that we're advocating for. Not that is wrong if that's what you choose.
Something that just came up for me is women are naturally nurturing, and sometimes we think that we're not being loving or nurturing, making choices that are for ourselves. Or, yeah, so we've been programmed to always think about others. We've been programmed to put their needs before ours, especially, if we want to hold on to that relationship. I have to do X, Y, Z in order to hold on to that. And that creates this it almost is squeezing on the other person, right? Because I'm kind of choking them when I go, oh, I gotta hold on to this so hard, and I'm not allowing um, us both to be who we are. And I just wanted to address that nurturing part because sometimes we think we're bad and wrong for wanting things, especially wanting things above someone else.
Well, and this goes back to when we talked about healthy masculine energy. And we
Exactly.
talked about how men and women have masculine and feminine energy. And the masculine energy is what we're talking about today. So, masculine energy is saying, I have standards, I value myself, I have self worth to say, you will not treat me that way. Right? And this has been seen as something that is not feminine. It's not something that women should have. They're supposed to be sweet and soft and nurturing and compassionate and
Giving
understanding and forgiving. And we are all those things. We are.
and
And that's only enhanced by having self-worth and having standards and doing some things that are actually really uncomfortable because it's not something that we've been allowed to do. Legally, we haven't been allowed to do them. So when I have standards, when I say I value myself enough that this is what is required to be in my home, to share space with me, to access my time, to have my labor. You know, what is required to exchange for labor that isn't freely given. You know, these things are hard to say. For a long time, they felt like gravel in my mouth. They were so hard, and they still can be so hard because that is not what I was trained. That's not what I was trained to have. That was not the mindset that I thought a good woman should have. And so I talk a lot about the good girl in my work, and she can be such a saboteur of actually what is self-caring for me because I was so thoroughly taught to be self-sacrificing and to be endlessly
yeah,
patient and forgiving
to the point
and
where there's nothing left of you.
comforting. Yes. Yeah, and so standards, although they are so massively uncomfortable, they are so important because this doesn't take away from your giving. And let me explain this. So, if I am just someone who gives to anyone who asks, right? And I'm just consumed all the time, there's not going to be much left of me. And I'm not going to be able to share much because I don't have
You'd
anything
be
to
rag
give.
Jill, not flourishing Jill.
And I've been there. I have been.
I have been
I've been
rag.
Raggedy Ann.
Me too.
Um, but if I have standards and I say I love giving my time, I love giving my mind, I love giving gifts, my resources, I love giving affection, my body, I love giving those things, but I am choosy about who I give them to. When I feel inspired to give them, not because someone else feels entitled to
Or
them,
expects it.
but because I love giving them when I feel inspired to. I don't go against myself. I don't betray myself and my intuition and my desires in order to give and give and give. I give when it's in alignment and I feel inspired to give. Then, when I do have those moments of giving, they're so much more powerful. They're so much more powerful. They don't have any resentment or exhaustion attached to them. They're fully, wholeheartedly given. So I hope you can see this picture of, giving in this energy where I'm just totally depleted and never saying no and never having any standards versus this other way of giving where you do have very intentional choices that you're making, who you give yourself to. And that is just a whole different type of giving. It feels very different.
Secret to a happy life, you guys. I wanted to address one other powerful statement in what you said is it makes it easier to choose the people you have in your life, whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship. It makes decisions really easy because you know what you value, and you know what your standard is. And so when it comes to making choices, you can say, yes, I want this and I don't want that. I can't even emphasize enough how that's made my life a lot happier and a lot easier. If everybody says relationships are hard, and I have to say that it's not always hard when you really know what you do. You have moments of things being difficult, yeah, because life throws things at you. But your relationship, if you know what you value, what your standards are, it makes things so much easier. It's real easy to say that's a yes for me, a hell yes, and this is definitely a hell no. And I just wanted to add that piece of how easy it is to make decisions of the people you want in your life.
I also think about, what we talked about earlier today, which was if you believe you have the right,
Oh,
then you do.
yes.
And today I am outrageous enough to say I have the right to an easy relationship. And guess what? I do. My relationship is easy. Do we have difficult moments? Sure. Yes.
We all
Life
do.
happens. But my relationship is not the difficult piece. We work through the difficulties of life together. But I don't have a hard relationship where we have fights and we have, these tumultuous
I know
problems.
someone who was getting married, and I was congratulating them, and they go, "It's gonna be a long, hard road." And I went, "You're going into a marriage knowing it's gonna be long and hard, and it just is a whole different um,
It does not have to be.
mindset, mind shift to say it doesn't have to be hard." And if you're struggling and it's hard, maybe you're already in a relationship, but it doesn't have to be.
No, it really does not have to be. I think we have told ourselves a lot of things that we think we have to settle for, and this is a little bit off. Well, no,
That
it's
goes
not.
back to
It's
the
really not off
loyalty
topic.
programming, right? Have
Yeah.
to be in this relationship
Well,
forever.
when we talk about standards, sometimes we think our standards have to be down here, because we think we can't expect anything more. Just the other day, oh my gosh, I heard this comment or saw this comment on Facebook where a guy had given a girl a compliment that he didn't know her, but like, you're so beautiful, blah blah blah, and she was a little bit uncomfortable with it, and she threw it out on Facebook, and another guy said, guys aren't normally affectionate or emotional, so you should
Oh.
take what you can get. And I was like,
Oh.
God, no. Here's an example of another story that we tell ourselves. You can believe that story. You can believe that with all your heart. And that's probably what you'll experience. However, my experience has been that men have been incredibly emotional
Me
and
too.
affectionate and very emotionally intelligent. That has been my experience.
Mine too.
So
It's also a requirement. Yeah, well, I just believe that. It's back to that generous assumption. I just believe that there are men that are like that haven't been allowed to.
So therefore,
They're programmed.
because you believe that, you set a standard accordingly.
Yes.
And so I want you to hear this, that if you believe, if your thinking is, this is all I can get, I should just take what I can get, or you just don't get everything you want, or like, if that is your mindset, then you're going to settle. And the thing is that you will always get what you're willing to settle for. Always. So settling and standards, we're talking, one end of the spectrum and the other. I settled for a long time because I didn't actually feel that I was allowed to have standards, or that if I had standards that they could actually be met. So when I started facing those bullshit beliefs and saying, no, actually, I can have standards. I can not just invite in, but require certain behaviors from people around me and let go. I had to honor me. I had to honor my standards, and I had to let go of anything and everything that didn't match those standards, which is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. Your standards will cost you deeply, but they will also be your greatest asset. Both are true, because I have let go of so many things because of my standards, but I have also invited in the very best people and people
Of course.
that treat me so well. Yes. See?
Me too. Great example
right here. Yeah, so you can't actually have the relationships that you truly dream of and desire unless you're willing to have those standards and hold to them. And a closing thought that I want to make sure is heard is that, a lot of times we look at our relationships as non-negotiable, right? I'm not willing to leave no matter what. And that's okay. However, something will be negotiable. It will either be your standards or it will be your relationships. I live my life knowing that all of my relationships are negotiable. My standards and my values are not. So, does this mean that I constantly have relationships rotating in my life? No. I happen to have a lot of amazing people who have no issue with respecting my standards as I respect theirs. But they all know and celebrate that if they were out of alignment with my values and standards, that I would need to release them. And that doesn't mean that I don't love them or that they don't love me. It means that I'm willing to release anyone who is going to violate a right of mine or a value of mine, right? So if they're out of alignment with my values and my rights, which make up my standards, right? Then they get to go. And that isn't because I don't like them. That's because I love me enough.
And them.
To honor me and them. Because loving me and honoring me is the most loving thing I can do for someone else and them. I want other people to value their standards more than any relationship with me. If being around me requires them to sacrifice their standards, then they should let me go. 1000%.
So true. And just to add to that, letting go of that allows the space to bring in more joy. And like Jillian emphasized, it doesn't mean I'm constantly evolving relationships. It means that those that are here close to me are those people that do know and love me, and they know me to the core, and vice versa. I know them to the core and what they value and what their standards are, and that's why it's a happy relationship. And so if I'm struggling, I have to take a look at why I'm struggling and then match that up. And going back to the equation, is a value or a right being violated? Is there a new standard that needs to come up? And just take a look at it. And it all comes from taking the time to know myself and understand myself and believe that I have that right to the kind of relationship I deserve to have, and that you deserve to have, and that your person that you're thinking about deserves to have. Because I might be getting in the way of someone's happiness. I certainly don't want that either.
And ironically, and Carter and I talk about this a lot, the fact that we have that freedom, that we don't hold each other to forever. There's no forever commitment. You have to stay with me. There is a commitment of I want the best for you more. I want the best for each of us individually more than I want this relationship to work, which then means that we are strictly here out of desire and choosing instead of duty and obligation, which has actually made a much stronger relationship, much stronger, and one that I actually am far more confident in working out long
There's
term.
safety and comfort and a solidness about it. Feels very, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very interesting, very much like a paradox that it is. Um, it's when we try to nail down a forever commitment that it so many things crumble because the choice is gone. Then we have made the other person commit to something that is it's no longer a choice. So it takes really the love out of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was wonderful conversation
Yeah,
today.
really
Thank you
was.
for being here.
Thank you so much.
100%.
Yes. All right. So in closing, let me.
What do we got next week?
Yeah, let me pull up our next topic so you know what's coming up. We have maintain autonomy next week. So you can expect that next week we will go into more of that topic about being able to be more independent and not relying on someone else for your basic needs. Autonomy is going to be a really important key topic that we talk about regarding specifically women and being a more independent partner and why that's valuable.
Yay.
Let's see. Our retreat is coming up in September, the Warrior Goddess Retreat. So if you would love to dig deeper into some of these topics about hierarchy, specifically breaking down hierarchy programming and inviting in more collaborative partnerships and reclaiming feminine power, your feminine authority that has really been stolen from you and broken down over the last couple of millennia. That
And your
retreat is
divine
gonna be
authority,
amazing.
too.
Yep, totally.
Honoring the divinity in you, yeah.
Your divine authority, really important key stuff. So if that resonates for you at all, check out my website, jillianaurora.com, and you can click on Signature Programs and the Warrior Goddess Retreat. And that is going to be mid-September in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is absolutely gorgeous. It is a very sacred spiritual place. It has a lot of mountains, and it's going to be spectacular in the fall. So check that out. And what else? If you're in Boise, coming up here, we have Kim Fest coming up on the 8th, which is a Sunday. So please join us. If you're in Boise, come check us out. I will have a booth with everything unapologetic, and Marie will be there.
Yeah, with Warrior Goddess and some other spiritual things. So yeah, we'll be next to each other.
Yeah, come check us out. What else? Anything I'm missing? Check us out on our Facebook group, Braveheart Conversations. You can check out any of our past episodes there. You can join in discussions about any of the podcasts. You can also find us on pretty much any podcasting platform that you're interested in. And you can find us every week, Thursday mornings around 10-ish Mountain Standard Time. And with that, I will
If you have
close
questions?
up. Oh, questions. Yes. I knew I was forgetting something. Questions. If you want to email us, you can email me at defytheaverage@gmail.com. If you have any questions, comments, challenges, topic requests, Marie, you can
Marie at mariesgold.com. Yeah, we welcome them.
Yeah, please do. So, yes, I hope you have a fantastic week. Stay cool out there. I know it's a bit warm, but yeah, stay cool, have fun, and we'll see you
Enjoy the
next
rest
week.
of your summer. Yeah.
Okay, bye guys.